This is Wacom's 27 QHD Cintiq graphics tablet. Hands down the best line of graphics tablets the industry has to offer. Coming in at a hefty price tag of $3,500 US. And it just so happens to be the tablet that I use professionally for all of my work. And this is XP Pen's cheapest tablet, coming in at the low price of just $20. Can it even come close to my Cintiq? Well, that's what we're about to find out. Now while I open this little guy, I'm going to mention a few of the features that each tablet boasts. Now the first thing that really surprised me about the XP Pen, not only its price point, but the stylus is completely battery free, which is extremely rare in not just a tablet this cheap, but for any tablet at all. Typically, I would say that's something you would only expect from a Wacom product, so color me impressed on this pen so far. Best case scenario, I would expect that I would have had to charge this while not using it. The fact that it's battery free is pretty incredible. But while we're on the subject of the pen, it features 8,192 levels of pressure, which is actually more levels of pressure than my Cintiq because I have the older Pro Pen with 2,048 levels of pressure. Way more than you could ever need. In fact, 1,000 levels of pressure is more than enough. So don't be swayed by larger numbers here. The real deciding factor is how well these pens are going to perform against each other in actual testing. XP Pen even has a graphic on their website showing the difference between 2048 levels of pressure, and it's just simply not true. You can get pretty close to the exact same results with both. Speaking of false advertising, XP Pen loves to make this little tablet look much larger than it really is. Maybe that person just had some really tiny hands, I don't know, but hey, can you really blame them? The thing's only 20 bucks, right? It does look like the pen has a couple buttons on it as well, which I'm hoping are customizable, but I think we're gonna have to get in and play with it to really find out. So a list of features is great and all, but what we really want to know is how does this thing actually stack up against the competition? And I have to be honest and say that the bar is pretty dang high when you're comparing it to a Cintiq. In terms of initial setup, these things tend to be extremely finicky to get to work with the correct drivers, but surprisingly, the XP Pen was extremely simple. I installed the drivers and it just worked right out of the box. It does come with a small app called Pen Tablet that allows you to customize your two buttons on your pen as well, as a few other features like setting your work area or changing how your pen pressure works. Overall, a very smooth and simple setup process, but one thing to note, if you have another tablet, much like I do, it will completely mess up the installation of that device. So other than it completely messing up my Cintiq, which I kind of expected but not necessarily to the degree that it completely destroyed it, pretty easy to set up if it's your first and only tablet. What was not smooth for this process, however, was attempting to actually use this thing for art, at least in the beginning. Because the workspace is so small on this device, even a tiny movement can translate to a large stroke on screen. Now I'm going to chalk this up to me not being quite used to the device yet, because there is always a transitionary period when you are getting used to a new tablet. The same thing happened when I got my first tablet, which was maybe twice the size of this thing, and it's happened every time since I've upgraded or switched devices since. As I had assumed beforehand, the pressure sensitivity seems comparable to my Cintiq. I haven't noticed a ton of abnormalities with the pen in terms of jitter, which can be a fairly common issue, but I have actually noticed that on occasion the pen pressure tends to jump from around 60% to 100 almost immediately. It doesn't happen all the time, so it's not a huge issue, but I would assume by playing around with the pen pressure graph, you might be able to get a little bit more consistent results. Now, hands down, the best part of comparing this little tiny tablet to my Cintiq is that I am actually sitting here drawing on this little thing directly onto a tablet display that I can draw directly onto. And that's just funny. So after I got everything set up and played around with the tablet for a little while, it was time for me to put this thing through the ringer and see how it actually compares to my Cintiq in my native element, digitally sculpting in ZBrush. So I spent a decent amount of time playing around with all the tools that I like to use, going through my normal workflow just to see if this tablet could keep up. And I'm not gonna lie, it was really difficult to use this thing. The first thing that I noticed was that the tablet had a lot of trouble making selections with anything in a menu. Particularly, it had a lot of trouble with sliders. And I'm not sure why this happens, but there is this slight delay or lag when attempting to click or select anything. And it's just enough that it causes a lot of awkwardness with interacting with any UI. So anytime I tried to adjust the size of my brush, lag. Anytime I tried to select anything in a menu, lag. Even when attempting to navigate in ZBrush, lag. It's not a huge delay or anything, but it's just enough to cause you to mess up what you're doing. Especially if you like to work fast or efficiently even. Now in terms of actually sculpting and working with the pen, it works great. I never really had any issues with pen pressure, jitter, accuracy. It did really well on all those fronts. Other than the slight issue in pressure jump that I pointed out earlier, it did surprisingly well for a tablet so cheap. Now it wasn't until about an hour or two into sculpting that I noticed the second issue with this tablet, and this is probably the main thing that I don't like about this tablet in particular, and that is hand cramp. This thing is super tiny, like ridiculously small, and the active area that you actually use on the tablet is even smaller. And that of course causes a ton of hand cramp. Repeating the same tiny motions over and over really starts to take its toll, and that is where you really start to appreciate having something a bit larger. But for you guys, and just to put the naysayers at rest, I continued on and finished this Sailor Moon sculpt using this tablet. I get asked what tablet I use more than anything, and a tablet is really just a tool, no different than a paintbrush. Now would I rather have a super high quality paintbrush that I know and trust? Absolutely. But this tiny tablet and pretty much any tablet can do anything a larger Cintiq could do. It definitely wasn't a walk in the park, and I might need to go put my hand on ice, but it can be used for art. Not as well, obviously. I definitely have a few caveats to that statement. I don't think I could honestly recommend this tablet. I would grab something about the size of an Intuos Medium for a personal recommendation. There are a ton of cheap alternatives to Wacom products out there that I think work just as well. But for me personally, I love the quality of Wacom products and I love my Cintiq. So no, I'm probably not going to be getting rid of my Cintiq anytime soon, but I was really impressed by this XP Pen tablet for $20. I don't really think you could beat this thing. To be completely honest though, for digital art, I would recommend avoiding this. It's just so tiny that you can't really use it for any length of time without your hand really starting to cramp up. But in terms of quality, compared to a $3,500 Cintiq, you can technically accomplish the same things. But yes, I obviously am going to want to use my Cintiq where I can draw on my screen. It's nice and big, I have a lot of room to move, and I'm not making these super tiny movements where my hand is about to just cramp up and shrivel and die, Crypt Keeper style. So I'm going to put some recommendations for some actual tablets down below in the description. Check them out if that is something that you are interested in. I'm also going to put some links down there to my brushes, materials, courses, etc., etc. It's all on my Gumroad. Check it out if that is something that interests you. Click that subscribe button if you're new around here, and maybe let me know in the comments section down below what is your favorite graphics tablet to use. Until the next time, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you around.